Hello, and welcome to the May Q&A, even though it's June. Just never mind about that. So, what it is that now that I want to post videos sort of regularly on here, once a month, I'll do a Q&A where I'll scour the internet for a set of questions to answer. But if anyone has a particular question they'd like to ask, well, there are various ways of contacting me, which you can find on the About page. We'll figure something out. This month, though, I googled for author questions and found this list of 50 fabulous questions. The link to where I took them from will be in the description, of course. And I don't know if we'll get through all 50. I'll do the first 20 and then I'll probably just skim through the rest. So, question 1. Tell us a little about your story and the story world you've created. So, Iron Gate is a sci-fi fantasy action adventure mystery. That sounds like it's doing a lot, but yeah, just think like classic Doctor Who and the Doctor was mostly stranded on Earth. Or a lot of modern comic books like Batman, like sometimes Batman he's up against gangsters and solving crimes, and sometimes he's facing gods and aliens, or even greater foes like punk rock. But anyway, it mostly takes place in a contemporary-ish setting, with some differences. There is true AI and companies that are out of control, with private armies and all sorts of sci-fi hijinks going on and making people miss their tea. And there's lots of references to folklore and mythology that I'll usually point out on my channel here because they're honestly not that subtle, unless they are. In which case I might not. Question 2. What are some comparison titles of books or movies similar to this? So, apart from those ones I've mentioned, there's also a little bit of Ghostbusters and Back to the Future, because you've got the backyard inventor basically building nuclear reactors and spaceships in their sheds for fun. And RoboCop and, Jurassic Park, Westworld, all that Michael Crichton stuff basically for the highly irresponsible corporate madness that goes on. And a little bit of the X-Files and Scooby-Doo too. Question 3. What books, films and TV shows most inform the aesthetic of this book? Just see all my previous answers. Question 4. Tell us a little about how this story first came to be. Did it start with an image, a voice, a concept, a dilemma, or something else? So initially I just wanted to do a simple thing paying homage to all those things that I've mentioned that I enjoyed whilst growing up. And also I wanted to write a woman Doctor Who type of character. Yes, I know the character is the Doctor, okay? You don't bother to nitpick that. In fact, I've already said it earlier in this video, so... Anyway, I started this long before there actually was a woman playing the Doctor. And obviously over time it's just sort of grown more complicated and into its own thing, which we'll probably get to talk about later, I suspect. Question 5. What special knowledge or research was required to write this book? Well, most of the fairy stuff and the mythology I already knew, because I've collected a lot of old books over the years about all that. So it was mostly just the more sci-fi science stuff, like genetic engineering and synthetic biology. Question 6. What research methods have been most fruitful for you? My Google foo has gone pretty strong at this point, I think. And I do think writers should get in the habit of doing their own research and definitely don't rely on sites like Twitter and Tumblr as a source for any kind of information. At least in my experience, if anyone on Tumblr announces themselves as an expert in something, it probably means that what they're about to say is complete nonsense. They'll be like, "Hello, electrical engineer here. Can confirm that electricity being the fons vitae will sometimes cause pylons to walk about at night and attack and slaughter cattle. And sometimes farmers too. This is why it's best to wear rubber boots whenever you go hiking in the countryside. Question 7. How did you go about developing the settings for this story? Well, I grew up in a big town, so that was the starting point. Then I gave it a history and started to populate it with my own made-up characters and businesses, a university, lake, mines. I had to come up with all their histories as well. And I thought this would all be a relatively simple and easy task, but every time I add something, like even just a post to say, I have to think about where that fits, not only in the town, but in the wider world as well. Question 8. What's the strangest thing you had to do to create this story? I created a discography and an acting career for a fictional artist who is barely mentioned at all in the story, but might be in the future, which I guess I didn't really have to do, I just did it anyway. I don't know, my understanding of what's strange at this point is a little bit warped. Question 9. Who are your main characters? Tell us a little about what makes them tick. So, there are 3 main characters in the current story. There is Tendy Titch, the perpetually angry tween. She's driven mostly by a childish sense of fairness or justice. People have done a bad thing and therefore they should be punished in kind. Because of course she actually is a kid. The difference between her and normal children is that she's been given the power to actually act on her feelings. But beneath all that and all the trauma, she likes animals and dinosaurs and likes to read fantasy stories. Then there is Kaya Cade, who is a punk guitarist and thief. She's in a band called the Killer Aqua Bunnies. She's come out of her teens now, she's in her early 20s and is now reflecting on the bad choices she's made. She doesn't really want to continue down the path she's on, but is not sure how to get off it. And just has a whole lot of regrets that she wishes she could fix. And finally, there is Jennifer Earhart, who is a tech witch, which, that just means some kids mistook her for a witch, but she's really just a tinkerer who bangs things together a lot. Had she lived a few centuries ago, maybe someone would have tried to burn her. Anyway, she lives in a lighthouse on top of a hill where a lighthouse shouldn't really be. Had a horrible time in her teens, in no small part because of Kaya. And so she's isolated herself from the rest of the world. However, curiosity may bring her out again. Question 10. If a film were made of your book, who would you cast in the leading roles? Don't know. I never really imagined real people or actors as my characters. They exist as their own entities, and it seems rather contrary to the whole concept of imagination to just imagine a thing that actually already exists. So maybe I'd make it an animated film, specifically a really psychedelic Soviet animation from the 1970s or something. Question 11. What is something about your heroine that only you know? Okay, so are you asking for a spoiler? I think we're far enough in that only those interested will be here, and by the time I get around to revealing anything, everyone would have probably forgotten anyway. So, Jennifer isn't really Jennifer. Question 12. Which character was most challenging to create, and why? So, the 3 main ones I've mentioned I'd already pretty much figured out before I started, because they were just imported from older projects and just needed a little bit of tweaking. So it was just all the other characters I really needed to develop and get to know. For example, Sayori was added in the first draft because I needed an extra character to do some stuff. But yeah, I didn't really know who she was yet, so over the subsequent drafts I tried various things, dropped some, and it's taken a while to get her to the point where she feels right. Question 13. Are any of your characters based on real people you know? No. I might take some aspects of someone, like a quirk. that I've come across and incorporate them in a character, but no one is wholly based on a real person. 14. Which scene or chapter in the book is your favourite? Why? I think when Tendy saves a magpie, just because it's the first time in a while that she's happy and hints that she really is a nice girl despite everything. But never call her a nice girl, though she'll kill you. Question 15. Which scene was most difficult to write, and why? There's some characters who are just bullies, and I don't much like writing them much. In particular, Jen has some flashbacks to being bullied, and it's a little bit painful. Question 16. Which scene, character, or plotline changed the most from first draft to published book? And I should point out at this point that there's definitely still a couple drafts left to go before I think about if or how I'm going to publish this current project. The current draft is functional, the story's all done, so the next draft will be making the language more effective and proofreading. But yes, lots of characters, they start off as just mere archetypes initially, but in each subsequent draft they grow and develop into more of their own thing as I delve more into their motivations. And as for plot, I actually cut out much of the plot I had in mind in the first draft to make it shorter, so now I'm just putting it all back in. Question 17. What do you hope readers will take away from this story? Appreciation for lighthouses, maybe? And fun. It's important to me that people just enjoy themselves. 18. Are there particular themes or motifs you wrestle with or address in your stories? So in fact, over time with each draft I've done of this, I've come to understand that a major theme in it is growing up, changing relationships, and the realisation that the magic you were sold when you were young isn't real, but that's okay. Because the universe still is a wondrous place even without elves and fairies. There are actually just far better stories that can replace those. And also, finding a family that accepts you. Some characters have misstepped or been misled in that regard, but hopefully it all works out in the end. 19. How does your faith life, ethical outlook inform your writing? So I'm not a particularly religious person. I was brought up a Catholic, but the only time I'm ever Catholic these days is if someone's trying to sell me another religion. But Jennifer and Sayori, they at least try to be moral people, and most of the protagonists actually do try, even though it's not always easy, and sometimes they mess up, and sometimes they mess up big time. But ultimately they do all end up trying to be better. And question 20. Were there scenes you ended up cutting you wish you could have kept? Describe them, and the decision-making process. I mean, if I cut something I like, I'll usually just pull it aside and maybe use it later in another project. So most of all I cut are just scenes that don't fit with the plot or pace of the story. Or, just a lot of transitional scenes where, you've got to get characters to a certain place for plot to happen. Early versions are often just very boring and didn't feel natural because I was just trying too hard to force things to happen. And now I've gotten far better at working with the characters to get them where they need to go. Okay, I don't know if the microphone has picked up my stomach rumbling at all. I'm just going to quickly skip through the rest of these questions and see if there's anything I really want to answer or that looks interesting. What book from your childhood has shaped you most as a writer? Basically what stands out is Douglas Adams' Hitchhiker's Guide, of course, and Terry Pratchett and his Discworld novels. Those are basically the books that got me through my teens. If you could choose a book character to be for a day, who would it be and why? I would be the tiger in The Tiger Who Came to Tea, because I just really like a nice cup of tea. That's it. Do you prefer writing in silence or to music? So as I've mentioned before on this channel, I and is in my description, I am autistic, and well, there's no such thing as complete silence, is there? If it gets too quiet, any little noise becomes suddenly very loud and distracting. So I tend to need some noise in the background to cancel out any other noise. So yeah, sometimes I'll have music on, sometimes I'll have podcasts or a YouTube playlist perhaps. Does this story have a soundtrack? Yes, there are definitely songs I sometimes listen to when I'm trying to get in the mood for a scene. When I do the weird video things here on YouTube, I of course have to use royalty-free music. I mean, I don't know that I have to, but better to be on the safe side, isn't it? But yes, is the answer. And I think we have covered enough for today. So yes, if you have any particular questions you'd like me to answer next month, you can leave a comment or contact me on any of the social medias and such that are listed in my About page. And of course, like, comment, whatever. For now, off with you. Live a good life. Goodbye.